guys, it's Jerry here, and in the past, I've been making budget keyboard builds, but today, I wanted to treat myself and build a premium board. For this build, I went with the KBD Fans Tofu 65 case. It is one of the nicest cases that I have ever seen, and it just looks so simplistic. The case is made of a solid block of aluminum and the edges are super sharp. Flipping the case over, it reveals a brass weight screwed on the back of the case. It has KBD Fans logo engraved and has a shiny finish to it. The whole case weighs 2.6 pounds and the brass weight alone weighs 1 pound exactly. Not only does the brass weight contribute to the overall feel of the case, but also the acoustics when typing on it. Also included in the DIY kit is the aluminum plate. They also offer a polycarbonate and brass option, but I prefer the balanced sound signature of the Alu Plate. The PCB included is a soldered version unfortunately, but they do sell a separate hot swappable PCB on their website. This PCB supports both QMK and VIA, which is super beginner friendly in terms of remapping keys. Also included is a set of cherry profile stabilizers, but they produce a lot of rattle even after mods, so I went with the Durock transparent stabilizers. Before you do anything else to the case, you should always put on the rubber feet included in the package to prevent any scratches to the case. I always start off by testing the PCB. I do so by closing the circuit. I use an angle tweezer and insert the tips into the two gold metal contacts like this. I use VIA key tester as it is one of the easiest to obtain. Supposing that the PCB works fine, we can start lubing the switches. For this build, I went with the Tealios V2 from Zeal PC. If you want more information, I will link some more detailed reviews in the description. These switches have been very controversial in the keyboard community as it has a reputation of being high-pitched, but I wanted to go with this switch for the buttery smooth feel and perhaps the teal aesthetic. I first start off by dismantling the switch. I use a switch opener which makes dismantling the switches super easy, but this step is still pretty time consuming. I will put the bottom housing and the stem in this lubing station and the rest of the parts in this tray. I start off by lubing the bottom housings. I get a minimal amount of Krytox 205G0 lube and divide them evenly onto the two sliding columns. After that, I brush the slider column 3 or 4 times, evenly coating the surfaces. Then I brush the leaf with the remaining lube. Finally, I dip my brush in the hole and brush around the pole. With the bottom housing done, I move on to the springs. I prefer bag lubing the springs as it is the most time efficient way and doesn't require large amounts of lube. So all you want to do is to dump all of the springs into a bag or container and add in around 10 drops of Krytox 105. This type of lube is an oil and not a grease like the 205G0. It will do a better job at coating the springs evenly. Now you just want to add some air into the bag, close it up, and shake it crazily for 1 to 2 minutes. After that, I place the springs back onto the bottom housing. The next step is to lube the stem. I would like to use a stem holder to grasp the stem more easily. I get the same amount of lube as when I lube the bottom housings. I evenly distribute the lube amongst the 4 sides. Then I will start brushing the sides evenly so the lube spreads out. Remember to also lube the legs. With the residual lube left on your brush, you can brush the bottom of the stem and around the pole. When finished, I place them back onto the springs laid out on the lube station. Finally, I put a minimal amount of lube on the top housing to ensure the best linear experience. This time, I put some disc key switch films on the top housing as it makes the housing tighter, which results in better acoustics. When all of the switches are done, we can start with the stabilizers. The Duroc transparent stabilizers are one of the best in the market and has no rattle after being modded. I personally prefer Cryptox 205G0 as it is thick enough to eliminate all of the rattle while preserving the tactility of the switch. I put some lube on the insides of the transparent housings so that I can see a bit of the whiteness. Then, I put the stem into the housing. I take the wire and put a very generous amount of lube on it as it is where most of the rattle happens. I spread it evenly on the wire so you can barely see the gold. Make sure that you also lube past the bend as it is where the wire clips onto the housing. After modding the stabs, I usually screw it on the PCB just to test if there is any rattle. And if you are 100% satisfied with the state of your stabilizers, you can start putting in the switches. Like I said earlier, the PCB is not a hot swap version, so we do have to solder today. This is my first time soldering a keyboard PCB, which makes me timid, but I have done some other soldering projects, so I should be fine. Many people do not like this process due to it being very time consuming, which I totally agree as I also prefer hot swap PCBs. But I definitely do not hate it as it is kind of satisfying when done right. I will link some tutorials in the description. Now when we finish the internals, we can finally put everything back together. Before screwing everything in place, I did put some decently thick foam in the case just to eliminate any hollowness, but that should not be a problem thanks to the brass weight. And now all we have to do is to put the keycaps onto the switches. For this build, I went with a muted keycap set. It has a really nice colorway and virtually supports any layout. And now, all you have been waiting for? The sound test. Overall, I'm super happy for this build. The Tealios V2 sounds super nice, and the overall feel is just very premium. If you enjoy these higher end builds, leave a like for more of these contents. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video.